How's it, Marty? Welcome everybody to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious. Little rough start on a Monday, but that's okay. We've got Nick Thomas here. Greetings, Nick.
Good to see you.
You all watching the show know that Nick is the chief educator at the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex. You're racked up 37 years now?
38.
38. And he's like me here at the American Space Museum. Why quit when you're so passionate and you can remember things, right?
A visitor told me out at the complex a couple of months ago, said that I've been on the job 8 years longer than Johnny Carson hosted the Tonight Show.
I can hear you.
Okay, check. How's that, Marty?
You need to get the mic close because
Yeah, there we go.
How's that? Better?
Yeah, your 38 years is longer than what famous?
8 years longer than Johnny Carson hosted the Tonight Show.
Wow, that is and those of you under 40, look up Johnny Carson. Yeah. He was an awesome person. I'll even look at those Tonight Show at 11 o'clock things a lot, though. Usually I'm not staying up too much past then to watch them these days. But we're glad to have Nick here. Just the millions of people this man has introduced astronauts, special programs at Kennedy Visitors Complex, and I mean millions. You just roll the numbers when you have 5,000 people out there at the Space Center,
Yeah.
maybe a couple hundred a day or in your attendance. And
for our recent launch of the Falcon Heavy, we had 12,000 people on campus in one day.
I heard about the traffic from Marty being backed up, taking the right to go with the light there. Yeah,
You got caught up in that, Marty?
12,000 people?
Yeah.
Holy cow. And that's our way of saying hi to Marty Winkel, my co-producer. 4 years on this program. We've done about 1,100 episodes, getting close to that. And he'll be writing your names down and taking your questions. I didn't bring any of my electronics on the set today to talk to you all out there. And we also have Logan Cope is our intern from Eastern Florida State College. Nick, we're glad to have some help from young people learning the ropes a little bit here. So very grateful for Logan the past couple of months he's been doing that. So we want to just say hi to Delaware North, your employer out there, and they do a great job, I think, of keeping things fresh. They're always pressure washing, painting. Really, I applaud them for that, and I'm right, aren't I?
Yeah, particularly I always like to point to the Rocket Garden because that is what I call our first impression, and they make a real effort to stay on top of the health of those rockets, make sure they're in good shape, and preserve them as best as possible because they are just once-in-a-lifetime artifact. We're very proud of them. And that whole philosophy extends across the campus. We're currently in the process of beginning construction of a new administrative building. And what we're going to do is put an exhibit where the current administrative building is. What it is, stay tuned.
Okay. A little bit of press on that, but yeah, it's supposed to be 5 stories tall, I understand. And according to the papers that were filed with the county government.
Okay.
If you can believe what's in the paper, and probably you shouldn't.
Well, the way I see it, making announcements like this is not in my pay grade.
No, that's true. There you go. Don't want to put you on the spot on anything like that either. And we're going to talk to Nick about some of his experiences out there. We got a couple anniversaries we wanted to get up there. One is, look at this. The green screen behind me is, of course, Kennedy Space Center. Mm-hmm. And on this date, July 1st, 1962, Launch Operations Directorate acquired the property, 220 square miles between the Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge and the little town of Merritt Island, so to speak. Lyndon Baines Johnson, our president, renamed it after our president, John F. Kennedy, on November 29th, 1963, just days after his assassination. But what a gorgeous picture that is, Nick.
Yeah, people don't realize not only what an engineering marvel Complex 39 is. We started the construction proper in 1963 and completed it in 1966. And that means pads, vehicle assembly building, mobile launch platforms, crawler transporters, the whole shot. We did that in 3 years. And that was when the nation could put their shoulder behind a project and get it done. So it remains not only as an engineering marvel, but also a testament to the will of the American people to fulfill President Kennedy's goal of putting the man on the moon before the end of the decade and, of course, bringing him back home safely. And fact of the matter is, you couldn't do this today with all the permits and the EPA and environmental impact studies. So you couldn't do something like that today.
It would take a long time if it did. And when this was happening in 1962, you were a young boy living up where?
Daytona Beach.
Yeah.
And having seen the flight of Alan Shepard in 1961 from the watching it on TV and then running out in the backyard and seeing it take off over the palm trees, and then when it hit the condensation level, you could see the trail, so you knew where the rocket was. But that was my inflection point. I think that's when I really became enamored of the manned space program, and have been ever since.
Well, I pulled up one picture here from the good old days. Like when Nick appears, I like to, which he's graciously on our show about once a month when it works his schedule. And there's an old school picture.
Yes, yeah, a very small rocket garden. And also, I don't know if we can see him in this
Right off
picture.
your shoulders, of course, this
The
rocket.
the F1 engine from the Saturn V.
And is that the main building right there behind it there? If I make it smaller,
No, go
you see
go
people
back to what you
standing
had.
there.
Go back to what you had. If you look to the left, that's where Nature and Technology and Theater 1 and Theater 2 were. And that's now, that building to the left is now the home of our Universe Theater, where we do our astronaut encounter. Now, what I was about to say was, along with those rockets that we have there, there are also a number of tracking antennas that were on display there. 3 different tracking antennas. And those antennas were rescued by the manager of our Information and Education Department, a man by the name of Tom Anderson. And he literally rescued them from the junk heap and had them stored and put on display out there.
Huh.
They're not out there anymore. We had to make room for more rockets, which is a good thing. But Rocket Garden, I always referred to it as being our first impression. It's that important because it's the first thing the visitors see when they come in, and it's important we keep that garden looking sharp.
You're absolutely right, Nick. You come in through the employee entrance every day, usually. And of course, I go through the gate, and just that's, if you're not looking up, you're going to bump into a family that has stopped there to take that picture of we're here.
Yeah.
And if they're looking around, bemused what to do, I said, take a right, get on that bus right away, and get out to the Saturn V Center. You got plenty of time to walk around and see this stuff here.
Sure.
But the Saturn V, I want to get people out there to see that, because Marty Winkel's Lunar Module 9's out there from Grumman and so forth. So, well, Nick, we're glad to have you here. I've kind of been under the blanket a little bit about what we're all going to talk about today. So tell me what's on your mind today.
Well, what we're going to do today is, I've had the privilege of being on this show many times, and you've interviewed me and asked me about history and so forth. But today I am going to interview you, and we're going to find out a little bit about Marquette and about his opinions on current activities in the space program, some of the history and so forth, and dig a little bit deeper into your
Well,
background.
thank you, my friend. That's very nice of you, and
You're
touches me a little bit.
You're also under oath.
Okay.
So keep that in mind.
Okay. Well, I am such a newbie here, and so eat up with the wonderful life that this museum's brought me here. That's very nice, because we work very hard, and I say we with our whole team here. But all right, let me get a cup of rocket fuel here. Dave Stangy's little 1-year-old granddaughter Mia is watching. Hi, Mia. And she says, hi, Mark. And maybe my granddaughters are watching with Jesse. So they'll probably chime in there, Marty, if they are. So let me have a cup of fuel here.
Okay.
So yes, sir.
Okay. Now, recently, NASA announced that they were giving the task of deorbiting the space station to SpaceX, and that deorbit will probably occur in 2030. Space station has been up there now for 26 years, manned for 24, and has accomplished a great deal. What, in your view, is our future in Earth orbit? Because NASA's going outward bound, going to the moon, going on to Mars. What do you see as the role for exploration in Earth orbit after the International Space Station?
Well, that's of course a good question. I see that, unfortunately, I see China maintaining a serious Earth orbit situation. As you know, space history very well, Nick. They've only done 13 human space flights in their history, and they've occupied 2 space stations over the
Right.
last 15 years. I think that private industry, like we talk about, your Blue Origin has their Blue Reef concept that they're building just right across from the Kennedy Space Center. There's a lot of dreams of having a hotel or a honeymoon or a getaway up in space. But I think that space is a little bit too hard for that right now with our primitive things. Still, we've had tourism. Tourists go up to the space station. But to make it profitable, what I mean, to have a Hilton orbiting the Earth or something like that, that's 50 years from now. We need to do something to maintain that. And I think that, again, the private companies are leading the way. Axiom wants to add a couple segments to the International Space Station and then break off once they put their own power plant on it. That's a very neat idea to help the costs and so forth. But Nick, I hope somebody saves some of the modules that are worth saving on the International Space Station. I can't imagine that Japan's Kibo, isn't isn't in good shape. I understand the Russian segment's pretty wore out. Things do wear out.
Sure.
But or at least leave a few legacy pieces up there to this is what the International Space Station meant to us. What some of the old timers tell me is they fear that the space shuttle era will be pushed aside. Why? Because there'll be no space station up there to remind us of it. And these same people say, well, always remember Apollo because there's always going to be a moon up there in the sky.
And there will always be, if not a Hubble Space Telescope, there will always be a James Webb Space Telescope. Now, I know that wasn't a space shuttle project per se, but it was, I think, fair to say, an offshoot from the Hubble Space Telescope, and Hubble was a space shuttle mission. So I don't think there's, even though the shuttle has gone away, I don't think there's a danger of losing that legacy just because there's certain hardware is not up there. Do you?
Yeah, and I agree with that, and that's why we on our program particularly talk about the shuttles of the month of May. I've loaded up for you today there.
Oh yeah.
Look at those beautiful shuttles of the month of May. We love talking about every one of them. I loaded up. You personally know Don Thomas very well. He had 2 missions: the Woodpecker mission at STS-70, and then the repeat mission. The return to flight. 2 flights of Eileen Collins are in July, 93 and 114. And I mean, Julie Payette. We did a remote with Julie Payette in Europe.
Oh, you did?
At the asteroid day. Our Eurocom, Alex Carl hooked us up with him. And I digress from your questions, but this is what we're all about here at the Space Museum, is trying to preserve the birth of the shuttle era. The torch is passed from the Apollo era. And we were dreaming of low Earth orbit with Skylab. And what behooves me, Nick, is that Congress will never put a bucket of money that is to keep us going of what we achieved in space. We're always doing a program. It's fabulous. Apollo, 6 moon landings, then bingo, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to have a reusable spaceship that's going to be a truck. Forget your single stick rockets, and then that goes by the wayside. Now we're building a space station that for 25 years has just revolutionized so many things.
And that's the tempo of the American adventure. We move from one thing to the next very, very quickly. Some people accuse us of being a disposable society and not giving adequate salutation to our heritage. I don't agree with that. We do move quickly from one program to another, I agree. But that's what makes us the United States. That's what has made us the trailblazers that we are. You don't get on the one thing that you do well and just stay with it. You've just got to keep pressing forward. John David Bartow makes a good point about this. John David says that the people at NASA and the contractors are constantly pushing themselves and their brains forward to the next thing, people look at it from the outside and it's all, gee, it's just another day at NASA, and it's not, because people out there are giving their absolute best in everything that they do. And I can remember during Gemini and Apollo, the old joke was somebody would ask somebody, well, how's it like to work for the space program? And the guy would say, well, the hours are long, but at least the pay's lousy. But that only underscored the pride that people had in being a part of this enterprise. And I don't think that changes. Talking to the astronauts today as they go out there to Kennedy Space Center, they say there's been no change to that sense of drive and that sense of excellence.
Yes, I do love that about the culture, Nick, is don't tell me why we can't, tell me how we can.
Exactly.
You know, and still, I'm an old school guy like you, your beautiful Apollo 14 patch there. Why didn't we keep the Apollo module? So, I mean, we're back always have that as an emergency system. Because we're back to the Apollo module with the Boeing and the Orion, basically, on steroids, with better, of course, with better integrated hardware and so forth. Yeah.
People who made those parts for Apollo long gone.
Oh, I hear you there.
Well, speaking of things that can work or things that can't work or what have you, we've got a spacecraft up on station now. It's Boeing CST-100. And Starliner has had its share of problems. They lost 5 thrusters, but were able to recover 4 of them on the final approach. Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams had to take manual control at an unplanned time to continue that inbound trek. And thank you, pilots.
Absolutely.
It's always about the flying. But now we're docked, and they're psyching out the problems with the helium system and with the thrusters. And the departure has been delayed twice, and now the departure has been delayed indefinitely. And obviously, they want to get all the data they can from that service module before it burns up in the atmosphere. What do you see as a consequence of all this? Do you think, for instance, after CST-100 gets home, do you think that NASA is going to undertake a reassessment of their partnership with Boeing?
Yes, I think they will. And I think you said a key thing there, Nick, when they get home. The spacecraft is worthy for reentry. From everything I've read. I'm not an engineer or whatever, but nobody's saying red flags about that. It's in this trunk service module that they can't bring it back, so they want to understand all about that. There's no doubt Boeing is in big trouble in all of its areas of expertise. Sadly, one of the world leaders has shown itself some of its flaws, and I don't know where that lies in the management structure, leadership, parts supply, whatever. They're flying aircraft around Earth, and this is so an embarrassment. Marty's sitting there. Marty can tell you, I would have lost money to him if he would have bet me. Who's going to go to space first, the Starliner or the Crew Dragon? Would you have lost that bet too?
Yeah, you bet.
I said Starliner, of course, is going to go. Some private company can't do it. Well, they've launched now 13 human missions in the last 2.5 years, you know, and Boeing, it's just. And there's been silly things. It was down for 2 years because the wiring was not waterproof. They discovered.
Part of the failure on the first flight was that they decided not to do end-to-end testing.
Yes.
And who makes that kind of decision?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
In other words, they had a launch segment, a docking segment in space, and then a reentry, and they just ran those 3 segments and didn't link 1 to 2. 2 to 3. Well, save money.
In getting to the philosophy of the corporate philosophy, let's call it, of, say, Boeing, we were talking earlier about SpaceX, and SpaceX is known to be a very tough operation to work for. You get worked over there, but at the same time, there was a time, and Marty will attest to this coming from Apollo, there was a time when we were proud to work for an organization that had a tough job to do. Yeah. You know, I made that joke about, the hours are long, but at least the pay's lousy. Right. But that was really kind of bragging about what you were doing, because what you were doing was so important. And I think we had that kind of drive and that kind of attitude in the days, certainly during Apollo. We have it now. I don't know what's going on with the corporate personality of Boeing. I have no idea, but they really need, at this point, I would say they need somebody like Gene Kranz to come in and write those 3 words on those 2 words on the chalkboard and get everybody's head in the right place and get their head back in the game.
And those 2 words he wrote
are tough and competent.
Tough and competent.
And the implication is, if you can't live by these 2 words, get the hell out.
Yeah. That's, well, today's society is not too tough. And I wonder how confident they are. We're talking with Nick Thomas. Rather, he's interviewing me in a twist of fate here on today's Stay Curious show. And Marty, I know some of the regulars are watching us today, probably Steve Jokums. Say hello to Steve Jokums, Tom Celentano, Bill Whiting, Robert Laws up in Dundee, Scotland, Carlton Bailey's out there in Canaveral Groves, Eric Pirrett, good new name there, Eric, good that you're on board, Tom Usiak, you might have a question for me, and Mitch is in Colorado, Manned Spaceflight is his website there, but Nick asked me about Starliner. I want to, and Dave Stange up in Michigan with his little granddaughter Mia. Hi, Mia. He specifically wanted to hear us talk about Starliner. And Nick, you back me up here. In a way, I'm kind of happy for Sonny and Butch.
Yeah.
Okay, are you too?
Oh, very much.
Because they each, Butch has got 150 days in space, Sonny 355 days in space, but they each waited 10 years. I think Sonny waited 12 years to fly again. Yeah. And you know they're digging the cupola that wasn't there when they come up, and just, you know what I mean?
Well, the great story is that the last time Sonny left the space station, she cried because she was afraid she was never coming back. Oh. Well, she's back now.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is great about Butch and Sonny is, I'll say it again, thank God for test pilots.
Yes, sir.
Because they were able to, they had some nominal manual flying they were going to do on that final approach. But then when this thruster situation came up, they had to take over in an unplanned series of maneuvers to stand off for, I think, 1 rev before they finally made the final approach. It underscores the importance of the pilots in this program. And I don't care if your spacecraft can fly itself and even butter your toast on the right side. If it can't be taken over by a human being, then who needs you?
Yes, I wonder if the Crew Dragon could have done those things.
I think the Crew Dragon, yeah. I think I'm very confident that if the crew on the Crew Dragon had to take over under similar circumstances, I think they could.
I'm hoping the Crew Dragon was capable of being a manual document.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
yes, it is. Right. I can tell you that the pilots insisted on that.
Okay.
But again, this is just another indication that the role of the pilot ain't going nowhere.
No,
I mean, it may change, it may evolve, as all things do, but it ain't going anywhere.
Well, I think what's interesting, I've shared on the show that astronaut Kay Heyer, who attends a luncheon that I go to frequently, I thought it was a waste that Butch and Sonny were 10 years grounded, and didn't go. And boy, she got out of her chair and says, "Mark, they're test pilots. Yeah. This is what they want to do. Yep. They live for this, Mark. No, this is the best people to have up there. They're not. They've been working their butts off." And Butch, I said, "Thank you, Kay. Thank you."
And Butch put it perfectly during the press conference when one of the reporters said, "You think this vehicle is ready to fly?" And Butch said, "Hey, if this vehicle wasn't ready to fly, we wouldn't be here."
Yeah.
That's true. I think that was the end of the question.
Well, I think they're having a blast up there. I asked you this question. I thought about whose food are they eating up there? Have you thought they're going to be up there, and because everyone's got their own food and packets in there. Maybe I don't know if they have a little extra.
They have onboard rations on the CST 100. However, it wasn't expected that it was going to stay up this long. So there is a pantry on board the International Space Station. I believe it's well stocked, and I think they've taken into account the possibility of delays in landing and so forth. So I'm sure they have a full larder on board, and I think everybody's but like you say, it's Butch and Sonny are probably lunch. What's that? I want to work on my spacecraft, because here they are, and they are flying the test pilot stream. They got a vehicle up there that's got some problems, and they've got to psych it out. So. What better day could you have as a test pilot?
Oh, absolutely. And the 45-day kind of shelf life of the STS 100. I don't know how firm that is, but that brings you into about July 17th,
Yeah.
18th time frame there. So, but I'm confident they can. I think they said they can come back in it. And the worst scenario is they just stay up there till they send either another crew Dragon with 2 people if they have to get rid of the Starliner.
I'm sure all the contingencies. are
And
being
I'd say they could
discussed.
put 6 in there right now if they
Yeah.
had to.
Well, I'm sure all the contingencies
yeah.
are being discussed even as we're
But
talking about it.
it's very interesting here, and we love talking about it, Nick. I'm always putting up who's in space. Right now, we've got 12 humans on space, 9 on the International Space Station, and 3 in the communist tin can that's orbiting the Earth.
Well, now let's put you back on the griddle here.
Yes, sir.
You are known to be a great fan of astronomy and
Uh-huh.
also human spaceflight. What I want to know is, did the astronomy lead to your interest in human spaceflight or vice versa?
That's a good question. They're so close to each other, but the astronomy first, okay? Because I was born in 1953, so I'm 70 years old, and I remember in 2nd grade, so I was 8 years old, opening up that science book because you got it out. You had a big load of books there as a little kid, and you got the science book out. We're done with history, and I flopped it open, and there in front of me was a picture of both pages, a painting of the planets, the sun, Mercury, Venus, red Mars, Earth, and rings around Saturn.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at that, and I go, nobody told me about this. Now, you might think, Mark, you're 8 years old. Hey, there were no kids running around with T-shirts that had planets on them, or there was no Barney or whatever TV to talk about this stuff. It was fresh on the minds, and I remember distinctly going home to my mom that day in September 1961, I think, and saying, how do I ask Santa Claus for a telescope?
Wow.
Okay. And I got one, a J.C. Penney's refractor that I got a picture on the wall up there of me with it, but wish I still had it, but it's where I started. And then I'm pretty sure somewhere down the line, I see, actually, I know in February, we moved to Florida for 1 year when I was 9 years old. Right after that, moved to Florida. And because I was in Florida in 1962, I've been 3rd grade, they were wheeling TVs in February to watch John Glenn's orbiting shot. All right, I don't remember Shepard or Grissom, but I do remember John Glenn's because I woke up February 20th, 1962 with the mumps.
Oh.
And I had to stay home. And my mom and I watched with Walter Cronkite and my little brother the launch, and we went out. We lived in Winter Park, Florida. Winter Park. And we went out in the backyard, and I remember seeing it go above the tree line. And until I saw a SpaceX rocket launch, that was the only rocket launch I seen. I tried to come down from Tennessee for 3 shuttles that got scrubbed, or in between the star party that I went to a lot down there. So astronomy came first and the astronauts were close behind. And I can remember getting from NASA that full color picture, those Mercury astronauts, that poster, and putting it up on my
We all had on our
wall.
wall.
You know what that poster looks like. And today it's just, everybody that knows me from my hometown of Findlay, Ohio, or my adopted hometown of Bristol and Johnson City, Bristol, Kingsport, Tennessee, knows that I'm doing what I love. And how could you be any luckier than a guy like me to just 8 years old, you love telescopes and astronauts. I'm privileged to have a few astronauts in my phone book here. We'll be inviting you to take Bakes out to dinner when he shows up in town, and it's just amazing community, isn't it, Nick?
It is. It's like no other community.
No, I'm bragging when I say, hey, there's a couple astronauts that Marty and I and you, we love taking out to dinner on behalf of the museum, just to get to know the museum, and that's the way to do business and a approach people. Got Charlie Walker coming around, and others when they have time to.
Sure.
Winston Scott's been so great to our museum, and one of the first real astronaut friends. McCulley was the first astronaut friend I made here, Mike McCulley.
Okay.
And then Winston, because they do so much for us. But folks, you can't believe how these astronauts give back to the community. They really do. 617 human beings have orbited the Earth. About 350 of them are American shuttle astronauts, and most of them are very unpretentious. They're happy to listen to the same question they've heard over and over. And yet, they love to relax too, and we get to see them when they're relaxing a little bit. And I'm going to say not let their guard down, but because I'm always going to be business friends with them. But I love that.
Yeah. Going back to the topic of astronomy, of course, we've seen the marvels of the Hubble Space Telescope, and Hubble hasn't even settled in the dust yet. We've now got James Webb up there, looking through the interstellar dust with its infrared eyes and seeing things. We put these pictures up side by side of Hubble and then pictures taken by Webb, and there's just no comparison. What are you looking for from Webb? What do you hope that we discover, or what particular discovery do you think Webb is going to point us toward?
Definitely the chemistry for life in the atmospheres of some of the nearby exoplanets. All right, I think that the search for life, we don't put it in that context much anymore. I believe there's people on Earth that think that have found life in some things that maybe the data in the Viking lander in 1976 and so forth. With the Webb telescope, though, I'm looking for it to last as long as the Hubble, which is supposed to last like 15 years and is going to be 35 years next month, and we're going to celebrate that, or next year. We're going to celebrate that at Shuttle Fest next year. I guess no specific thing, Nick. It's more like discover things that change the way man thinks about the universe.
Well, now
we're the universe can get along without us. All right.
Yeah.
All right. But we're going to find the ingredients for life in so many places. We're going to see things already that we didn't think could happen, like early galaxies forming close after the Big Bang. The Big Bang itself is kind of being altered. It's just I want to see another cosmic revolution like we had when Copernicus said it's not the sun going around the Earth, okay, which people believe for over 2,000 years that the sun went around the Earth, all right, and then 500 years ago, these great scientists led by Copernicus and then Galileo and Newton and so forth proved that no, the sun's just a star out there. Earth is a third rock from the sun. But there were people burned at the stake. I'm serious. A guy named Bruno was burned at the stake for talking like I'm talking today. All right. So, but I think we're going to find not people waving at us or anything like that. And there's no real pictures of planets we're going to see close up. Where we can see the atmospheres, and they're going to say, wow, this atmosphere is just like Earth, and it's got oceans, and we know where there's water, there's life, and where there's stuff in there. So, but really for me, it's like they're going to discover so much stuff that we don't even know about.
I know we look at the images both from Hubble and from Webb, and we see some amazing things, and with an astronomy background, you can see things in it which may not imply one thing or another, but you have a certain idea of the roadmap that you're looking at, and you have an intellectual understanding of it. Do you ever just look at these pictures from a raw gut emotional standpoint and it just blows your socks off?
Oh, yeah, it does, absolutely. Particularly the Hubble. We're looking through dust and so forth. And Nick, I talk about it on Stay Curious, where the law enforcement has infrared machines that they can go down the street and they can see, oh yeah, Mark's sitting in that couch there and Jill's in there and their dog, and I'll see the cat. Oh, the cat just jumped up. You see the heat signature of these things. And of course, they use it a lot for drug busts and things like that. I don't know how how I get permission to do that. I don't think they need it. But this is what the Hubble's doing. I mean, the Webb's doing that the Hubble couldn't do. So now they're matching the pictures with other great observatories, like the Gamma Ray Observatory and the Compton Observatory. Because what is amazing to me, Nick, is you go out in your backyard and you look up and all you see these little points of light. And our sun is just a star like that. But our human vision is limited to just, if the electromagnetic spectrum's this big or a yardstick, what we see of it is just like a couple of inches of that 3-foot yardstick. And the rest of the universe is really invisible to us. So, if we could, what we don't see is still there. And that's what blows my mind. I was looking at a little bit of the Milky Way from the backyard last night. You got beautiful Scorpius is to the south at about 10 o'clock. It's like a big fish hook. But if you could see what a telescope sees, there's globular clusters of hundreds of thousands of stars. There's these big, vast clouds where stars are being made. All that's up there, all right? And we just can't see it as human eyes. That's what blows my mind. And, I'm a Christian, but you think too deep about things. How could anything create all of this and keep track of it? But Nick, those galaxies and the dust that Webb's looking through to the columns of creation picture are the same atoms and molecules that are in this microphone that we're talking about. No matter how small or how large the scale of the universe, the same laws apply. Like Star Trek, you cannot change the laws of physics, Scotty says. That is what I think is the religion of the universe, really.
Yeah, it goes back to something Fred Gregory once said. He was asked, what do you see when you look out the window towards space? And in a sentence he said, I see order.
Oh.
And I thought that was very, very profound. But he said, this is not an accident.
Fred Gregory, an astronaut that completely gave a presentation. I never thought that with his paper credentials would give that. He looks like a stiff commander and stuff like that. And he's not, is he?
Oh, no.
He's very talks about the universe in his talks.
He's, as I say, a very well-rounded individual. He's got a lot of interests, and he talks about his education, not only learning science and engineering and mathematics and so forth, but learning diplomacy, reading about different subjects, learning about finance, and all these things that eventually came into play when he was a deputy administrator.
Yeah.
So
Marty and I, first time we saw him, with the encounter that you do, I remember Marty, we walked out and I said, man, he didn't talk too much about being a commander.
Well,
or a pilot. I go, he's a hell of a pilot, commander, and
It's funny, back when I was in high school, kids would usually say, well, what am I going to use this for? And I'd say to myself, what the hell kind of life do you plan to lead?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, that's pretty much the questions I had for you, so I'm going to let you off the hook and
All right.
put you back in the
Well,
driver's
thank
seat.
you.
But
Well, one thing I admire about Nick is like myself, we've had kind of different careers, and your aspirations to be an actor in New York City is because I got a warehouse of pictures of everybody. When I pull something off, I go, there's your New York City days, and I think we're both blessed that it prepared us for this sort of environment of talking to people that do things that are really hard to do, because acting is very hard to do. A lot of people think they can do it, and there are some natural people at it and so forth, but the cattle calls that you stood in line and you had the looks and the delivery and everything, it's just sort of a kismet thing that people get, right?
I can remember one cattle call where 12 of us there were probably about 200 people in the auditorium that were going to audition. And we were brought up 12 at a time on the stage, and the director said, all right, everybody turn left. We all turned left. And they said, okay, turn to your right. We turned right. Said, now turn around, face backwards. We did that. Said, okay, face front. Thank you. Next.
Jeez.
That was and I remember the director's name, and I won't repeat his name because I've got a voodoo doll of him at home somewhere.
A voodoo doll.
But
yeah.
that was the worst cattle call I ever went to.
Well, thank you, Nick, for this little interlude there. We've talked about doing some shows together. One that just popped in my mind. Why don't we do one about space movies someday?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
Give our
that'd be a good
opinion of
topic.
space
Sure,
movies. Think of your
absolutely.
favorite ones and
Yeah.
your worst ones there
Yeah.
that involve astronauts.
Yeah.
I just watched Marooned
Yeah.
the other day
Yeah.
because we did a story with Jim Lewis, who's
Uh-huh.
doing a documentary on Martin Caden,
Hmm.
who wrote Marooned,
Right.
and of course, $6 Million Man. That was hard to sit through and continue watching. It is Gene Hackman, one of the worst acting, in my opinion. Maybe you liked it, but oh my God, I had a hard time watching. It's just too.
I remember seeing it when I saw it for the first time in theaters, and it was against the grain as far as what everybody thought of the astronaut image being. But I said, no, of course this could happen, for crying out loud. Pressure is a funny thing.
Yes.
Some guys flourish, some guys fold.
Yeah.
And in Gene Hackman's case, you had a guy who folded.
Yeah.
Now, there might be people who say that his acting was over the top. I will leave that to them. But as long as that sort of thing is possible, as long as it can happen, it's fair game as far as an actor is
Yeah.
concerned.
No, it
You make
was.
your
It
choices.
was. I've been a little too critical about it, but it was an all-star cast and just a really interesting. We'll do that one day on there. So we've enjoyed talking with Nick Thomas. I do have a couple of things that are current events we're going to talk about that juxtapose in history today. Marty, you've got a comment or question?
Yeah, first a question and a couple of comments. Dean Babcock is asking, do you think SpaceX will be the first to land an American back on the moon?
I think there are a lot of challenges with the design that I've seen of the SpaceX lunar lander. And it's not for nothing that NASA reached out to Blue Origin for an alternate design of a lunar lander. From my view, I think that the Starship, as Elon calls it, that whole profile has too many damn moving parts, too many needs, too many refueling needs, just too many steps, I think. And I don't want to be an old fogey and say that's not the way we did it back in Apollo, but it isn't. I mean, it was a straight line. The shortest distance between 2 points is always going to be a straight line. And in talking about it with some friends, some folks think that Elon is so anxious to fly this Starship vehicle eventually to Mars, and I think that's a noble goal. But I think when he was invited to put forward a proposal for the lunar landing, he said, "Oh, here's a way for my Starship to fly." No, you're kind of using a shotgun to kill a single fly, I guess. But I think, and I think it's already been said that the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General, has really said that SpaceX needs to really seriously assess their plan, their architecture for this lunar landing program, because right now there are just too many moving parts. I think that's why I said earlier, I think Artemis 2 will go fairly much on time. Artemis 3, I don't know about, because there's so many questions about that lander.
Well, I concur with you, Nick. Even Artemis 3 has been talked about of being an Apollo 9 low Earth orbit rehearsal of all this fueling and stuff. Once you get into it, the fueling of this Starship is a lot because it's got to refuel to get off the moon at 1/6 gravity. And many of you have dug into some of that stuff in there. I'm gonna definitely say that there'll be Chinese on the moon before Americans.
I will
All
go.
right.
I will go against you on that.
Will you?
Americans will be there first, and I want to remind.
I hope the
everybody-
Chinese are kicking us to
Well, yeah, sure, to spur us,
to
absolutely.
go there.
Competition is a good thing.
because
That's
I look at
great.
them being there by 2032 easy.
But the first, or the claim of being the first country on the moon, that's already been taken.
Yes, it has.
The next first is going to be who's first country that's going to go back to the moon.
Yeah, I hope it's us, and I think it'll be the blue moon of Blue Origin.
Blue Origin, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
being built right across from your
Yeah.
workplace there, because part of the failures we saw of 2 unmanned spacecraft, okay, the Israeli spacecraft landed and tipped over. All right, the intuitive machines, great concept. It tipped over.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this. The landing legs were tucked underneath the body of the bus, or whatever you want to call it. Marty's lunar module, Surveyor spacecraft, they had those landing legs splayed out way there so they could handle
Center of
things like
gravity,
that.
center of gravity,
Yeah.
center of gravity.
Yeah.
And
If they're going to do the Starship, they got to spread that out a
Yeah.
little bit more, for gosh sakes.
even on the LEM, even on Marty's spacecraft on Apollo 14, those guys were trying to go to bed one night and they woke up and it's like, did you feel this thing kind of tip? He said, yeah. And they had landed on a slope.
They were.
And even the guys who were on the moon inside that spacecraft had some concern that it could conceivably fall over on its side.
Yeah.
I don't know what the chances were of it, but it was a concern. And I suppose if you're in the spacecraft, your concern
Yeah.
is the one that
Well,
should
we've
be
had,
taken into consideration.
I grew up in Ohio and walked across some fields and ponds and stuff that you thought were pretty solid. Oop, my foot just went in
You bet.
2
You
feet,
bet.
so there
Yeah.
could be little hollow areas on
Sure.
the lunar
Sure.
landing there. But they're rushing it too much. They don't have the data. They don't have things in place for the Starship. If they're going to go to the South Pole of the moon, we need to put satellites up for communication 24/7, that the moon's not interfering
Yes.
it. China's already done that.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate to give up low Earth orbit and all the science and stuff that's being done there. But I do want to go back to the moon, and I certainly would have thought 50 years later, watching the lunar landing 55 years ago as a young man, that there'd be like Antarctica, 50 to 100
Oh, sure.
people there
Yeah.
by now, working like an Antarctica base there. So
And that's what we get from a lot of people who come to the visitor center and talk to the astronauts. Why aren't we colonizing the moon by now? Why don't we have a research station? Well, in a word, and it's the same word they'll all use, politics.
yeah, politics.
Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing because you've got to set priorities as a nation. There's no doubt about that. But to have something in the palm of your hand that could lead to more advancement,
Mhm.
both technologically and as a species, and to just let that go by the wayside, that's not how great civilizations conduct themselves.
No, it's not. And thanks for the question, Dean Babcock. Marty, you have another one?
A couple of comments. One from Dave Stange. Besides the movies, what to do a show on books.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
There's
Yeah,
so many
good
books out
idea.
there.
Yeah.
We'll do that. Books and movies. We're going to see Mike Baker, and he kind of opened these astronauts open my eyes about things, because I'm still very naive. You've been dealing with them for 30 years. There was one of the, I'm not going to name them, one of the books about the Mir space station.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, Bakes, how did you like that book? And he said, well, Mark, not very well. I'm quoted in there of some things, and they never interviewed me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a couple of things I was brought to my attention, not so much, So I said, the lesson, Mike, is don't believe everything you read.
Yeah.
And absolutely, he said.
I've spoken to 3 astronauts who were interviewed for that book, and in each and every case, they all said the author came to them and said, now so-and-so said A, B, C, and D. What's your comment? That's not an interview.
No.
I don't know what I do know the guy came from Vanity Fair, which is not to me a bastion of journalism excellence, for crying out loud. Why don't you just come from
Vanity
People magazine
Fair.
and be done with it?
Yeah.
But no, that's no way to conduct an interview, to say, well, so and so said this, what do you say about that? That's not an interview.
Yeah.
So I agree with Bakes and others who stated that I think the direction from which that author was coming was flawed. I'll be generous and put it that way. But
I ate it up 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I read it. As part of the gospel.
Sure. It was something that you hadn't been exposed
Yeah.
to before, and a chance for an in-depth look into it. But for an in-depth look, it was in many places remarkably shallow.
Yeah, I read other. I want to make well, make sure we're not talking about astronaut books, okay? The biographies about themselves. We're talking about the look back at history books and so forth. Now, you can take Andy Chalkin to the bank, and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and some people out there that have done their research and so forth.
Chaikin is the gold standard.
Yes, he is. Yeah, amazing. And he's been in our museum years ago. Was a great supporter. We need to catch up with him one day. But and there are a lot of good astronaut books out there. The hot one right now, I think, is Space Shuttle Stories by Tom Jones.
Oh, Jones.
Tom Jones's book there.
We were just looking at Terry Birch's book.
Yeah, I checked Terry Birch's book out of the library today. But you know, so, and I've told people that checking out these books and so forth that are talking about Apollo and all that stuff, I go, there's escaping me. There's like 2 or 3 Apollo books written 30, 40, 50, 40 years ago. Why do you need any more? You know, really, the further you get from history, the more people embellish it, I think. If they're not quoting new facts in there.
No, I can see instances where time has brought clarity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I can see that too, but I'm a little cautious about some of the opinion books and so forth. But anyway,
some
we
folks are
digress
always
a lot.
going to have an axe to grind, so
Yeah.
that's just part of it. And you, as a reader, have to be able to separate that wheat from that chaff.
Yeah. We'll look into that. We'll do books and movies.
Yeah.
Maybe that'd be a great show to work on here for July or August, I mean, in there. Marty, another comment?
Yeah, before I even give you the comment, you can do multiple shows on movies and books. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh,
maybe
yes.
one a week for the next year. Anyway, Mark, I think this is directed to you from Carlton Bailey. You just touched on life outside Earth. Everyone seems to be talking and looking for life as we know it, and doesn't seem to want to say life might not be carbon-based.
True, might not be carbon based. Good point there, CB Carlton Bailey. Where we're going to find that is on the moon Titan of Saturn that has methane oceans going in it. Okay, that would not be carbon based. But yes, what I think life is going to be roly polies or blind crickets in the big caves underneath Mars. Where like caves on Earth, there's a temperate climate, they're insulated from X-rays and so forth. I really think life is existing on Mars right now in caves. And as far as the ocean worlds of Jupiter and Saturn that we're talking about, Nick, some of the science education shows that fascinate me the most are when they go down at the Marianas Trench where there's supposed to be nothing.
Yeah.
And the pressure is like incredible because of all the weight of water on top. And there's these like spider looking things and glowing things. And I mean,
Well, that's the point.
life is just so adapts everywhere.
That's the point that Steve Smith makes in his presentation when he asks about the possibility of life out there. He says, we don't know what it's going to look like. It could be microbial. It could be 7 feet tall with 2 heads and 14 eyes. We don't know what it's going to be. And usually when he goes into that description of 7 feet tall, 2 heads, I said, Steve, you're going to give these kids nightmares. Lighten up.
Yeah.
But it's true. We don't know what kind of life is going to be found out there. And as Carlton says, it does not have to be carbon-based.
No.
So
Well,
that's the excitement.
Yeah.
That's the excitement.
Well, we don't know anything else except carbon based. So we're blind to
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, sure.
But science
We're
fiction writers
we're-
have predicted the future time and time again.
We're basist.
Yeah, we're basis. Yeah, I guess
Carbon-based, we're
we are.
basist.
We're basis. Yeah. What you got there? A question there.
Oh, I got some names here for you to read.
Dean Babcock. Hi, there's my granddaughter, McKinley. Hi, McKinley. She's watching with my other granddaughter, Macy. McKinley's 2.5, and Macy's half a year old. And Jesse and Ryan, and my daughter, and her boyfriend there. Thank you guys for watching, staying curious today. Cliff Watson's in Pomona, Australia. How's the breakfast Tuesday morning there, Cliff? Gary Gerald just got off his tractor in Collins, Georgia. And his wife Donnie, great fans of our museum, and Steve Jokums just a little disappointed in the second of three races in a row for Formula One. We're Ferrari fans,
Okay.
and Carlos Sainz came in third. And boy, that Charles Leclerc, he's got some tough luck on there. But what a great Formula One season we're enjoying, Steve Jokums, and thank you for connecting with that on us today. Do have a couple things. Thank you all for enjoying today's show. Nick and I have often talked about, let's just open up the microphone and start talking. I think we keep ourselves entertained more than them. Because talking to somebody with such expertise as Nick and passion that he has is just amazing. But in history today was launched on July 1st, STS 94, and Roger Crouch, Don Thomas, Susan Still
right.
are very much in the queue of your astronaut encounter out there.
I think 83, 94 are the two missions that have the greatest representation of astronauts in our show, because we have Roger and we have Don and we have Susan.
There's Susan.
Susan up front, right?
Don's just off the shoulder there of Jim Halsell, the commander, and then Crouch is in the back right there.
Now let me tell you a story that I learned recently from Susan about this walkout. Now, as you come out of the elevator in the operations and checkout building there, back beyond the door, you take a turn, and at that turn, some of your loved ones will be there to say adios, to say goodbye to you, have a good trip, and so forth. And they're cleared by the flight doctor, of course. So they come around, and one of the people there in the group is Susan's fiance, Colin.
Okay.
Navy SEAL. So Colin is there, and Susan sees him and goes over and gives him, kiss on the cheek, and then walks out. And one of the NASA guys sees this and goes over to Colin and says, "Where do you know that girl from?" He says, "I never saw her before in my life." So my God Almighty,
Put handcuffs on him.
The messages started flying up to the spacecraft. Susan, I think management wants to talk to you about that walkout. Something about somebody you saw out there. So, but of course, that's the Navy sense of humor. Thank you, Colin.
Now, and her name became Kilran from Still, right?
From Still to Susan Kilran.
That's how it goes there. And there you are with Don. And
yeah, they are.
Nice, so that's kind of a low resolution there. But I thought, well, I'm just pulling off, going, wow, this is so cool. Today, in when was that? 91? No, 97. All right, 27 years ago, right now, these two were in space together up there for the second time together, because STS-83, after almost 4 days, it had one of the fuel cells go down, so they brought it back. But to do this microscience laboratory right, they had to have it up there for like 16 days. So the fastest turnaround ever, 3.5 months, from April 8th when it landed, to July 1st. So what a thrill, and a quick way to get 2 space flights on your resume.
Well, it's interesting, because at that time, when they saw the success of reflying a crew, some people in management started saying, well, why don't we take the positions of pilot, commander, and flight engineer and keep them together as a unit and fly them on different missions? And the rest of the office said, oh, no, we're not going to do that.
Susan Kilran could have been a commander, the third female commander behind Eileen Collins and Pam Melroy.
And she was asked one time why she didn't stay with the program, and she said the fact was that the kids had a mother who was an astronaut, a father who was a Navy SEAL, and it's just not fair to expose a family like that to that kind of risk. So Susan became a stay-at-home mom, and she absolutely loves it. And I'll tell you, she's one of the great storytellers. She would make, I think about her writing a book, and I think of her book as being a picture of the evolution of the space program, or her career in the space program, along with the growth of her family. And I think that would make for some very, very fascinating reading. Don Thomas over there to my left in this picture. Don has just got boundless energy and boundless enthusiasm.
Because he's a Buckeye from Ohio.
That's
like
right.
Me.
He's an Ohio guy. Yeah. And Ohio, for a long time, had the record of having more astronauts in the office than any other state. It's been surpassed, as I understand it, by New York, Who would have figured?
Really?
Yeah.
I'll get
Yeah.
the research
So,
department on that.
Well, you get the research department on that and talk to those folks in Ohio. We need some more folks to step forward here. But there you see two of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet, and two people who have just more than earned their place in shuttle history. Just a couple of remarkable people.
Don's going to be here, I think, in November to talk to the Japan, Florida kids that come here regularly. And no, he is so engaging. He's one of the hardest working astronauts out there. I think 300 days a year he's actually out doing the thing on there. Now, he doesn't always do it for free, and let's just say that these astronauts deserve to be paid. And but Susan Kilran really surprised us. I'm saying me and Marty and all the group there. She's just so warm and sincere, and very she wanted to learn more about the museum and our women's gallery. And by golly, we'll get her on Stay Curious here one day to talk about.
She is a naval aviator, and I think that's all you need to say.
Yeah, naval aviator. That's they're kind of like I did 300 aircraft landings. Which one you want me to tell you about? They all in there. But there's again Roger Crouch. This was his only two missions on the far right. He's also a very nice guy. You're there with. Tell us who you're there with.
Yeah, in this image, starting from the left is Ken Cameron, shuttle pilot and commander. He's another Ohio guy. In the center is our old buddy John McBride, the skipper, one of the TFNG. And then alongside of me is Roger Crouch. And the celebration that we were having here was that Roger and his wife Ann from Washington, D.C., they're involved in this program to make quilts for veterans. They're called honor quilts. And Ann made one for John and came down from Washington with Roger and did the presentation. So that was the day we presented Big John with his honor quilt.
A year ago? It was within the last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And his son, John Jr., told us to let people know that he does have Alzheimer's and that he is in perfectly good health. And and he does get out and about, once in a while in there. But you worked with this man. He was the chief of the astronauts for over 20 years. So I can't imagine anybody knowing him any better than you. Well, we wish John well and glad he's in good health.
There's a good picture I need to send to you. About 2 weeks ago, Crip came down to visit Big John. Yeah. And the two of them standing together. I sent it out to all the astronauts, and they all came back, and they talked about what a heartwarming picture that was.
Oh, good.
To see those two together, because, of course, Big John was a pilot on 41G, and Crip was a commander. Yeah. So it was good seeing them getting back together again, and they both look great.
Would have been more missions for him had it not been for the Challenger.
John, as you see, has the mustache now, but for a while he had the mustache and the goatee.
Oh, okay.
And the first time I saw that, I gave him the needle, and I said, "What are you doing? What are you just buying a Harley or something? Are you a biker guy or something?" But wonderful guy, a guy who helped to forge the path for our astronaut encounter office. Came out, made a lot of great changes and a lot of great initiatives with that program, and was also the guy when they decided they were going to put all the orbiters up for bid and not anybody was going to get a lock on these things. John was the one who went to Delaware North Management and told them, look, don't think that you've got a divine right to one of these spacecraft. You don't. You are going to have to work hard. You're going to have to present one hell of a good proposal for this vehicle, and you're going to have to go flat out to get one of these vehicles. And we did on the basis that we had the best design out there. And I love all the other orbiters, but I will tell you that we have the best orbiter display in the country.
Yes, we do.
No two ways about it.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. And I've seen Discovery a year ago, Marty. 2 years ago, Marty's when we went to Udvar-Hazy and got to see it there. And Endeavor's being really framed up nice out there.
Yeah, it's going to take a while, but that's going to be pretty remarkable.
Be beautiful there too. Mr. Cameron on the left there, Oorah, the Marines there, Marty. That's something I've picked up now, is that that's the Marine patch. See,
Oh, yeah,
the
that's
astronaut
right,
patch
that's
there.
right.
And the Air Force is silver,
And
the
the Navy is gold,
yeah,
blue and gold.
Navy's blue and gold.
Now,
there,
of course, remember also that Marine pilots are known as naval aviators because they get their training from the Navy. So you don't say Marine pilot, you don't say Marine, you say naval aviator. And they're
Okay.
very serious about that. And you look at those gold wings on red, but those are gold Navy wings.
I think Crouch. Oh no, you got both of them coming back here. Cameron and Crouch. Cameron will be out there middle of July, and Crouch will be the end of July.
Yeah.
And then KT's coming back.
Yeah,
Kathy
yeah,
Thornton.
Yeah.
Right before her birthday. Her birthday's the same as my daughter who's watching, August 17th. And we got to wish, she was out here last year, and we got to wish, she's so nice too.
She's good people.
And we've got her blue suit in our women's gallery, Kathy Thornton. Hopefully we can get her in the building this time around. She wants to come. Well, thank you, Tommy Usiak, for that beautiful Hasselblad shot of STS 94 going up 27 years ago. That is just a awesome daytime shot with the water reflection there. And I racked up, you never know who's going to be needing to buy milk. Who's that you ran into?
Well, one night I was going to Publix to pick up some groceries, and I parked my automobile, and I got out of my car, and I turned to go into Publix, and this voice behind me said, "Hey!" And I turned around and looked, and it was Steve Smith and Terry Wilcutt.
Okay.
Steve was just leaving as Terry was coming in, as far as astronauts at AE were concerned. And it's like, how often does this happen? You run into two astronauts at the grocery store.
Really?
So we went inside, and we ended up in the dairy section and talking about the F4, talking about flying stories and so forth. And Terry is one of our newer guys in the rotation, but he's been with us a number of times, and he's just wonderful. And Terry is another naval aviator from the Marine Corps. But you say Marine Corps, and you think, okay, here comes a guy, chewing the cigar, rough and tough. That's right. Terry is one of the nicest, most soft-spoken fellows you'd ever want to meet. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's got such a marvelous, soft-spoken disposition. And so based on all that, I told him that his new name is Terrible Terry Wilcutt.
Terrible Terry as a pilot and a commander. And he taught Mike Baker how to be a commander.
Flew with Mike Baker.
Mike was his right. Love to see the two of them together over a couple beers one night. I bet that'd be a lot of fun.
Yes, it would.
Maybe we could get them. But that's always so nice there. How did that happen? You're not the type of guy to want to just get a selfie anywhere you're at.
Who was it? Steve took the picture.
Oh, did he?
Steve Smith took the picture.
Okay.
And I don't know why I forgot to get Terry to take Steve in my picture.
Yeah.
But
he does a great talk.
Course,
he really.
Yeah, and the two of them, Steve and Terry together, they're just a riot. They're just the stories bounce off one another, and it's just a lot of fun.
Marty was commenting how Terry Wilcutt here's demeanor with the public is he's very attentive to everybody.
Oh yeah, very much so.
And Marty noticed that he stops signing when he talks to people, and instead of signing and talking, and that's not a bad thing.
Well, Terry
he
Terry
really engages people.
As you mentioned earlier, is one of the guys who feels a responsibility to give something back for what he's gained from the space program, and it is important that the people who support the program have a chance to talk to these men and women who have flown these missions, and to be able to get not only that information, that knowledge, but more importantly, the inspiration. And that's a big part of their mission out there, is to provide inspiration for the younger people. They're all committed to that. And I think Terry, no less than the rest of the guys, he's just really just aces.
That's great. Well, we're going to go out here with a couple pictures just showing, didn't know what Nick was going to talk about till he said, I want to talk about you. Mark Lee's out there. That's a picture that he puts in his talk.
That's the Q&A, his question and answer period. And that was actually based on a postcard that sold in Florida back during the Mercury days, back when we were flying ham and the monkeys and chimpanzees and so forth. And someone came up with the idea of putting that on a postcard, and it sold very well. And I actually found one in an antique store some years ago, and I put it up in the office. And I labeled it Our Founder.
That's good. I like that. And there's what you do. Take questions from people in the audience there. You got to attend this. I don't have much criticism of Delaware North. I know exactly what they want to do, and that's make money and yet, present the history there. But I wish they would announce on a microphone speaker at 10:30, folks, come and see an astronaut encounter. But these are very well attended in there, and so I'm just saying you always take Q&A, and though they've heard it 150 times, how do you go to the bathroom in space?
And Mark
they always patiently answer it.
Mark is one of our Hubble guys. And
Yeah,
tells some great stories about that. About those Hubble EVAs and his experiences there, and he's just a wonderful guy.
we hope he can participate in our Shuttle Fest. I'm going to give you the name to Ed Rezak is who you guys want to talk to these astronauts about. He's the one that trained them, and Ed's going to be part of our Saturday event. And there's just a great guy that's exactly how I see him every time he's out there, engaging the youth. Guy Gardner. An Astro One mission on there, and just tell us a little bit about Guy there.
Well, Guy also has a background in teaching, as you can see. He knows how to engage young people and instill that sense of excitement in them. And again, you can see right here the commitment to wanting to reach out to the younger generation to provide them the inspiration they need to carry through with something like this. And you never know, one of these days, one of these kids you've spoken to might end up walking on Mars. You'll probably never know that.
No, you'll never know that.
It would be very cool, I think, if some astronaut came forward after a mission like that and said, I got my inspiration from seeing an astronaut named Guy Gardner up on stage.
Yeah.
That would be one to go out on. Some kid would come back and say that the astronaut encounter experience is what led him to a career in spaceflight.
He's I think of all the astronauts I've heard out there, he gets the audience involved in every time. He wants to hear an adjective to go to space, or give me an adjective for how you'd feel walking in space or whatever. And it's a lot of fun. What's so important, Nick, of what you do as we go out here on another great Stay Curious program with you is so important to what you're doing. We interviewed John Harrington. We've recorded it and going to air it later. Still haven't aired it, but I said, John, you give your time at Kennedy Space Center, all right, and for 4 or 5 days or whatever. And I go, did you ever realize that you might be the only astronaut a person will ever see in their life? And he was kind of taken back by that. He goes, no, I never really thought about that. And I go, well, you are, sir. I said, in fact, I hadn't laid eyes on an astronaut in about 20 years, and it was John McBride down at Ripley's, believe it or not, in Gatlinburg, when he was doing a program there, and all he wanted to talk about was West Virginia. To us Tennessee people there. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. They don't realize that.
And it's funny, in working these programs, it's something you do sometimes become very close to the degree that you forget, this person over here, they're really enthusiastic, but this is probably, and they realize this is probably the only astronaut they're ever going to meet. And some of the astronauts will say, how do you handle the fact that you have to answer the same question many, many times? I said, I took my advice from Yul Brynner, who did The King and I for years on Broadway. And I had the privilege of seeing him on stage. And you talk about charisma. I mean, he just absolutely defined the word. But Brynner was asked the same thing. How can you do the same script over and over, night after night, for year after year? He says, I always remind myself that I may have been doing it a bunch of times, but it's the first time they're seeing it. And that's the important thing. And I think that's the same tack that the astronauts take in these presentations. And they'll tell me, they say, Guy, you must get tired of hearing the same stories from us over and over. I said, no, I don't, because the reaction is always going to be different. The questions are going to be different. And you're always going to be finding something new to talk about when you least expect it.
That's exactly right. And I hope you've enjoyed some of these remarkable stories from this wonderful man that champions our museum. I appreciate that, Nick. And we're going to look forward to having you back again. Thank you so much for a wonderful program. Thanks for a little twist on it there.
Yeah, sure.
Hope you all enjoyed it.
Put you to work for it.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it there and enjoy your friendship as well as all that you do to promote the American Space Museum and what we try to do here. And what is that? We're preserving the birth of America's space age right here in its delivery room, Brevard County. And we think that's a pretty big deal around
Yes, it
here.
is.
So thank you all for watching. We're going to roll into some shuttles of the month of July on Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know what we're going to do yet, but Thursday and Friday we're going to be off like everybody else, so you can kick back and enjoy our nation's birthday and have a wonderful, long, extended holiday. So until tomorrow, on behalf of Nick Thomas and our staff here at the American Space Museum, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.